somebody, yes, please.
Okay, there we go. We're recording.
Yeah, I'm completely baffled by the whole thing. Thank you. Okay. Are you seeing my document?
Yes.
And we are recording. Okay.
Yes.
So far I've had a couple of offers which are now marked in bold. So Jasmina Griffiths has offered, as you see, under A, something on forecasting important quantities and developments, and also under B, she's willing to present some success stories or possibly some failures. Robin Thompson has also agreed to come in there. And did I have others? I think those are the offers I've had so far. So for those of you who are here and your names appear, you can say you are willing to contribute something. It doesn't have to be very much, maybe a couple of paragraphs on some of these topics, either as I suggested or in some other way.
I'm happy to contribute to the reconciliation for models. I haven't really done expert elicitation in any format other than with the models.
Yes, that's why I put you down there.
Yeah, so I'm happy to do that as long as Marissa, I'm pretty sure Will is going to be involved from our conversation. So I'm hoping Marissa will say yes too.
Marissa?
Yeah, I'm happy to contribute as well. That sounds great.
Great, Marissa, yeah.
Okay, so you're bolded as well.
So Marissa, maybe if you did more on the individual expert part and the views part, and I could write a little bit about the model part.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Because
that's
I don't
great.
know. Yeah,
that's great. And Will would come in with you, perhaps.
I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will. Yeah.
Anyway, I'll leave it. I won't bolt him in his absence. Well, I think Michael. I think I had you down.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
So you know, go back up again. Go back up to the top. So it's this updating in the light of new data / changing science, which seems very cool. Okay, so I'm happy to know that I'm on top of that. So is the idea here that the elicitation doesn't just happen once, but that there's a structure for this which is kind of ongoing and
well, I think I mean, don't forget, these are challenges. These are things which we might not necessarily be in a position to do now.
Yeah.
But we think are good things that we would like to be able to do and have maybe some, what they're now calling having a path towards it.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously it is a fundamental thing. And I mean, apart from the fact that I'm just drowning in creating online content, which is a totally brain-mangling experience. But apart from that, I mean, the general principle of turning that into a more specific challenge of how to look at it as a dynamic process rather than you structure it, you ask people questions, the end. Yeah. Then
there's one trivial way, I say trivial, which is just to do your proper Bayesian updating and ignore the experts as the data come in.
Yeah, but which is not trivial of itself. And of course, the experts themselves will change their views as they learn things. It's not that the experts, were perfectly rational people who thought everything, got their conditional probabilities exactly right, and then just followed Bayes' theorem forever. I mean, that would be a weird paradigm to impose, particularly when people were dying. Because
the actual Bayesians, yes, we couldn't live with that.
No. Yeah, so in principle, fine. In practice, how it all links up to everything and how the timing works, but I've got no problem in.
Okay, well, you've bolded yourself.
I appear to have.
Rather, I've done it for you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michael. Who else we got who's actually on the call? Marissa, I got you down here again. Is that reasonable?
No, that sounds, I think we can draw on some examples.
You've had some success stories, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. We've seen a little bit of use. So definitely from ecology conservation, and I've been looking into some other areas, so for sure.
I mean, I think when we had our initial half-day workshop, of course, a lot of that was exactly about describing what's been done and how it's been done with some success. So I would hope that would be one of the material that could be included here, that sort of thing. I was hoping Willie would join us because I've got it down for quite a few things. Oh gosh, Marissa, I got you down again. I think I'm probably overdoing it. Education of training of problem. I mean, we can also, we've got too many topics here, so I'm
Phil,
probably they will be merged, I'm sure.
Well, Phil, could I ask something about the framing of all this before we dive into too much to specifics?
Very good.
Which is, I mean, some of this thing, I mean, if the stuff is really generic to expert judgment rather than specific to pandemics, then it probably ought to go in the potential parallel quotes tutorial paper or review of, and so that's in the one point.
So I mean, so A is supposed to be targeted on pandemics, although only the first one mentions pandemics.
And I suppose the other crucial sort of framing thing really was that we were hoping that this would, when it calls itself estimation or whatever it calls itself, that I mean, inference seems to me is possibly a better title. Whether it's happy to share with UQ and also I think with more sort of conventional estimation and inference. So the idea being that you came at it from the angle of what do we need to estimate, infer, and decide under uncertainty in the pandemic context, and then that would naturally flow into challenges where one was suggesting that the answer was to bring in some challenges in which the answer was to bring in structured expert judgment.
Yes. I think that's
and others where it, and sharing the platform with others where perhaps some sort of conventional estimation was was also useful.
No, certainly we were very much thinking, I haven't decided, but thinking that it could well go in together with uncertainty quantification.
So because I think in a way, I mean, I think it's perhaps because structured expert judgment is a new or developing or a lively field that that you start thinking about pandemics and you find yourselves having ideas about the methodology in itself, which are good, but they're not really quite challenges in pandemics. And I think for them to, the idea that the idea that we might have a number of sort of parallel papers as a sort of appendix to the challenges volume, there are several other areas where this seems to be something that might be desirable. So, I mean, no way saying this isn't good stuff. We don't want to have it in the volume, but I'm just wondering how we're going to get a manageable structure for a sort of shared estimation inference.
Yeah, I mean,
if it ends up that there's so much in it that estimation inference wants to get split into, let's call it standard inference and exciting new inference, and this is exciting new inference, then fine. But I thought we were still in the phase where we're hoping that we might at least think of it as one paper and see if it.
Okay. I mean, if we're thinking of targeting very narrowly, as it were, on things which will directly address problems arising from the pandemic situation, then there's probably not a lot here that is so narrowly focused and is not otherwise more generic. I mean, there are things which I think are particularly relevant to pandemic applications. For example, causal modeling, this whole one, and changes under interventions, changing science. Yeah. They're certainly very relevant to pandemics, but they're relevant to other applications as well. So I'm not quite sure just how narrow you're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think it may not. It may be partly. There's
been
I think it may be the way you frame it, and because as I say, I think it wants to spring from questions about the pandemic, and if in the answer to a question in the pandemic you say, well, a very promising avenue is structured expert judgment, or some particular part of structured expert judgment, and that actually that would require further developments of methodology within structured expert judgment, then that gives you a reason for discussing that there.
Right. So it seems to me then that the challenges would be generic challenges of understanding pandemics, and the expert judgment would be a potential solution to those challenges.
Exactly.
So it's not challenges within doing structured expert judgment, but
exactly. I mean,
challenge which can be addressed by structured expert judgment.
Yeah.
So, for example,
what would they be?
May I give an example?
Please.
Thomas McAndrew out of Nick Reich's lab, Marissa mentioned this in her talk as well, has been doing expert judgment where he asks epidemiologists every week some sort of questions about the progress of the COVID outbreak. What he doesn't do is a double round, and so he solicits information and just takes the answers, but doesn't ever have a discussion to sort of resolve biases or uncertainties that could be resolved. So, I mean, you could take that as a lovely example of a process that's existing and is running and has just been funded actually by the Midas program in the United States, but could be improved. So there's a way that you could discuss it and also talk about the challenges of then dealing with a better structured expert elicitation process.
So this is a fairly unstructured expert judgment.
Yeah, so he does do nearly everything he's supposed to, Marissa.
We'll put it on the chat.
Isn't it Thomas McAndrew, Marissa? Isn't that his name?
Yeah, that's his name.
Yeah, and he's a postdoc in Nick Reich's lab in the USA, and he's just, I think, got a faculty job somewhere, but I forget where, Pennsylvania, I think, but I don't know where. But Marissa might know the links because she definitely talked about it too. And I've just seen he just got a Midas award, so he's doing it actively. So it's certainly very important that we refer to it, but then it's, without being hypercritical or anything, we can discuss ways that one could improve the process.
Okay, yes, so that's definitely something to research. And that's, yeah.
Right, so can I ask then, I'm still trying to understand. So this is challenges for structured expert solicitation. You seem to imply that UQ was in a different room or on a different paper or a different challenge. I'm just trying to get my head around.
It has been developing in parallel. It's not to say, but we are thinking of.
But for example, when I look at updating in the light of new data changing science, how I would answer that is that I would think of that the part of UQ that involves structural discrepancy between your model and reality, okay, then that's the part that's kind of open to refinement. And so I can't see how you'd even start to do this. The structured expert elicitation within the whole UQ framework. Well, whether you mean that or not, that would be fine. But I don't see how you can separate them.
Well, we're not obliged to separate them. It'd be great
to. Mike, I think what I was saying was meant to be implying that we want UQ. We particularly want UQ and SEJ to be in the same.
Fine. That's good. No, that's good. That's good.
And if the challenges are application oriented, then all the four possibilities for any specific challenge of neither of them relevant, one of them relevant, or both of them relevant, can be exemplified. And another point I think is that I think there may be some challenges, particularly I think to do with UQ, as I understand it, that might actually go in the modelling paper.
Yes.
So.
Very much so.
This is Jasmina. I wanted to add.
Hello, Jasmina. Welcome.
Hi. Sorry, my video is off. I can put it on and say hi and switch it off. Yes, indeed. A part of it is sort of going to go a little bit about the modeling, and And actually both concepts, I had a offline chat with Will about something else in a project we might be working on. And so a concept of the structured expert elucidation would also go towards the modeling in a way as a new uncertainty measuring methodology or estimation methodology. So there will be an overlap with that. One thing that I think we also have to think, and Michael's point about how we are going to be answering the sort of what happens with new data and how we do it, also has to be a calibration aspect. And there, you know, yes, UQ is one, but is really the same calibration method as you get more data the best, or do you get complexity with new data that requires you to reassess your calibration methodology as well? I think that's a point we should mention. So I'm looking at it, updating in light of data and science, and that should be mentioned there. If you want to add me there to put something there, or otherwise it just needs to be mentioned.
Right. I mean, I'm happy and delighted to add you in. I'm just thinking that from topics and comments that we've been discussing, this whole thing may actually have to be redrafted so thoroughly that it may cease to be recognizable.
Well, I think this is a really good maybe follow-on paper that really nails down into sort of one aspect of the broader paper that we are writing here, right? That could be the case as well, Dennis, no?
Absolutely. I was but the whole standpoint I'm coming from is not criticizing anything mentioned here. I mean, from my amateur point of view, it all looks good stuff, but I think as I was saying before you joined us, Jasmina, I think some of it might go better in the parallel tutorial, we're calling it, paper.
Okay, I think that's a fair point. I'm wondering though what that leaves for the content of a challenges paper or section.
But in the tutorial paper, do you not tutor people in what's been done? And in the challenges, you say, well, that you hit limitations as soon as you try doing any of this.
I call it tutorial, Michael, but I think that's an unfortunate word. I mean, I think
Pository, perhaps.
It would also be a place where people could discuss generic things.
Yeah.
You know, problems which come up in the context of pandemics, which are really generic methodological problems for SEJ, and so they're challenges within the methodology of SEJ. And if the people who write that would like that to be in a parallel paper in the same volume, that's fine.
You're thinking of being okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, just clarify then, Dennis. So you're thinking that these parallel papers would actually come out in the same volume. That's the idea.
That's potential. So I mean, I think you've got three options. I mean, one is that the thing is sort of pandemic motivated, as I call it, in which case it goes in the challenges themselves. The second thing is this perhaps tutorial idea where, and I think tutorial things which are, whether they're discussing modeling, I think that's come up, that there should be perhaps a modeling tutorial paper. And if you had a tutorial paper, so these are things which we feel, these are methodologies that we feel people in epidemiology really ought to know more about, and they've come up in the context of discussing challenges. So we would very much like them to appear as papers alongside the challenges in the same, hopefully, dedicated issue. But then there is a third option, which is if, on thinking about pandemics, you come up with some generic challenges in structured expert judgment, which you would rather publish in a research journal or whatever to do with structured expert judgment, then the people who write that should feel free to take their stuff elsewhere if they feel that the readership of, let's say, does the most likely target epidemics, if they feel that the readership of epidemics is a bit too narrow for where they would like to publish their breakthrough in structured expert judgment, then of course they should publish that sort of thing elsewhere. So
right. Well, it seems to me that the order of things would be to try and divvy up the material into these different parts, something which would genuinely be challenges relating to pandemics, which I think doesn't leave an awful lot of what's on this current document, but we must try and populate that a bit. And then the what we might call the expository paper, and we think later about where such a paper might actually be targeted. But let me think then, or let us all think about specifically challenges arising from thinking about the pandemic situation, this and future pandemics.
And
the only one here seems to be early identification of new pandemics.
Well,
and even that's not particularly unique to pandemics.
But what I was going to say there, Phil, was that the as I hope you're aware, I'm not sure if everyone on this call is, we've been looking at the more applied challenge topics, and in that context, there's a thing called the challenges table, which the latest version is in the Dropbox with the date 3nov at the end of it. Okay, so everyone who's got access to the Dropbox can find that and have a look at it. And what we've done there is we've taken that was to sharpen our thinking about the first potential 5 challenges papers, which are the ones on starting with environment and going on through interventions and elimination of endemicity. And we were trying to cross classify those according to the sort of methodology that was involved in the challenges. Okay, so for the challenge themes 6 to 10, 6 being modeling, 7 being estimation or inference, 8 data, 9 economics, and 10 politics and policy. I suppose the mirror image of that process would be in looking at possible use of structured expert judgment to look at those things from environment and emergence and interventions and so on, and say,
okay, so think of this.
Where is this going to be useful?
Right. So we're thinking of the columns then, the methodological
maybe
tools that we have available to address the challenges.
I think
yes,
I was just going to say maybe the way that at the moment they are columns and the other challenges are rows, for the next set of questions they'll just be interchanged.
Exactly. I was going to say that myself, Jasmine.
Oh, sorry.
No, absolutely. Because if the columns, exactly, because if in the challenges table, you're quite right that the themes 1 to 5, which I'm calling the applications, form the columns, and the 6 to 10, which are the methodologies, form the rows. But then if we're writing the papers for the methodologies, we swap round. Exactly.
I think this is a very good plan because we can see the landscape of the papers coming through them then.
Yeah, and
right. So right.
It reminds me of a jigsaw I once tried to do, which was the same jigsaw on both sides, and working out a way of doing it. So here a challenge would be a piece of the jigsaw, and you'll be trying to work out which way up it went, whether it really belonged as a methodological challenge or as an application challenge.
Right. I think the idea is very good. What I'm wondering about is what content we have and who do we have who could put it in. We could make it's all because very little of this is actually being applied at all in pandemics. It becomes very speculative.
But I think there is a point about that it hasn't been used and maybe should have, and maybe this is a challenge that we should be heading towards for the next pandemic, that it should be used.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I think it's definitely. I think it's an excellent idea to think about that table and think about particularly cells in that table where we think there is something real, a real challenge of some interest rather than just a cross classification, which we get with empty cells. So we should maybe go off and do that and think about just where in such a build a table, think about where in such a table there might be real material to insert. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, but I think we could, I mean, I think it would still be useful, would it not, since we have this document in front of us, Phil, we could go down it and maybe we could identify some of these bullet points as being things which went in, which either potentially went in a particular sort of part of the challenge schema or perhaps belonged in one of the other potential papers.
Okay, so let's do that then. I mean, we're thinking of looking through these topics on the current document, but trying to focus them on specific pandemic challenges, specific areas. And then, well, I haven't got I don't know if I can get the current table up. Let me just see. I don't know if I do, whether you'll see it as well. I don't know how this thing.
If you unshare your screen and then reshare the new document, then we'll see it.
Yeah.
And while you're doing that, may I just ask, so I'm only involved in this part of the program, but it does sound from your description of other papers that there are things that, I mean, I'm not saying that I would contribute to, but that where ideas that are being discussed here might move across, as Dennis was just saying. And I was wondering if you could also just keep an eye on things that come up in this discussion that even if we excise them from this document might healthily move elsewhere, because I have no overview of the other papers. I've seen the challenge list, but I haven't been, the time zone difference makes it challenging to sort of join anything you do in the mornings. And then I'm also very heavily committed. So it's hard for me to know. Sorry, Dennis.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kat, we're trying to be as helpful to this cross-referencing as we can, because I think it is important. And the idea at the moment is to is that the Dropbox has a folder for each challenge theme, and I'm trying to keep those folders very small, to have very little in them, and that they just have, well, the most crucial thing they have is the current notes, just as, you know, the notes which Phil has just unshared, you know, is or should in
Am I unshared? I don't know what's going on here. Didn't mean to.
No, I think you're just, maybe you've just moved the page you're looking at. It's just like
okay. I thought you. I don't know what's happening. I can't do this. Hang on.
There we go. There we can see
so when
it
I move
now.
to a different screen, so although I've shared one screen, it moves. Okay, forget it. I can't cope with it.
The problem, Dennis, is that
if you can access the Dropbox, you can see what we're up to in challenges 1 to 5, where you may not be interested in the directly, but we have now got, I think I'm right in saying, challenge folders 1 to 5, each of them has got a little notes thing, rather like the one Phil's sharing with us now. And
but
then,
so would I be okay to look at that? Because it feels a bit presumptuous to look at something I've not been invited to participate in. I mean, this is the only one.
All potential challenge authors are supposed to be allowed to share, to look at across all the challenges. I mean, I can't, because we want to pick up these cross references, and if you don't do that, we can't do that. So and there's this challenges table, which as I say is columns corresponding to applications and rows corresponding to methodology, and in those we've got a lot of bullet points, you might call them, which are potential challenges, meaning that they would be written out they're done in soundbite form, but they should be written out as a sentence or something as what the challenge is, and then each appear in the paper, be written up with a paragraph or a page, that sort of length, describing what the challenge is more precisely. So that's the sort of schema for doing the first 5. Now, we haven't got to that stage on the second 5. So that's what I hope we're getting towards over the next week or two. And it may be that a two-way table doesn't turn out to be so helpful for these. I'm open-minded on that, but I thought at least wondering what a table for this half of it would look like. As Jasmina says, it would perhaps have columns and rows flipped.
So my problem then, I've tried, Dennis, is you've granted me access to a single document, not to the whole folder, and certainly not to the big folder. So if you could grant me access to the whole folder.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised at that, because
it's not letting me in.
I've totally failed to access Dropbox, but my Dropbox is totally screwed up anyway. I think it decides that I've got many accounts.
I think for people who have a working Dropbox, I mean, the way it looks to me is what I do is I go to Dropbox, I look at shared folders.
It's not showing up, and I tried to accept your link. So
no, I couldn't use your link.
Yeah, I mean, other people seem to find
you may need to, if you have it as a desktop, you may need to resync it at some point. It depends how you have
resynced. Yeah, I have resynced, Jasmina. Thank you, though. It's a good suggestion, but I have.
I'm trying to
help. It's a good help. It's a great suggestion.
And just to say, Catriona, you're very welcome to contribute to the modeling part as well.
Well, so that's what I do work on. So, I mean, is there some way you could, Jasmina, maybe send me the current document just so I don't have this Dropbox?
I was just looking at it, Dennis, and I was about to say that it's not been tidied up fully. So maybe just bear with us till the end of the day. We'll send it to you.
Can I just say my connection seemed to have dropped for a short time, and you're talking about some document. I'm not quite sure what it is.
There is an equivalent sort of a drafted version that we've worked on the modeling side that is in chapter 06 modeling. Which everybody, as Dennis said, should have access to, right, Dennis? So, but if you don't, then we could potentially share it with you later. But I just want to tidy it up a little bit, or look at it, or discuss with the people, and then look at it. And then we have a meeting on Friday at 9:30. Yes, I know it's awkward timing.
But that's 4 in the morning for me. It's not possible. I'm sorry.
So maybe after that we could share it with you, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm keen to get this Dropbox thing working. As I say, what I find is I go to Dropbox.com and I try to share it, and if I want to share it, I can put the email addresses of people in with either view or edit, and I'm doing edit for everyone. So please be careful if you edit other people's documents, of course. And I just then say share, and I think what that does, it sends to your email address a link which you then have to accept in some way. Yes. And if that's successful, you should then be able to see the whole Dropbox folder, which is called IDP. You should be able to see it on your computer as though it was one of your own files.
Yeah, when I click that link, it does one of two things. One is it either takes me directly only to a document and doesn't let me see the folders, or it asks me to provide credentials that I do not have.
Oh.
So I'm just letting you know why I can't get into it.
I'm afraid that the answer to that probably requires an understanding of Dropbox I don't have. If other people are having the same problem, I'll certainly try and.
Maybe we can ask Chiara. She's always very helpful.
Hello. I keep my connection keeps on dropping. I don't know why. Which is a pain.
Because I use Dropbox on my laptop and it syncs kind of straight away. I have like a folder within it rather than using it on Dropbox.com, and I don't know what the others.
You probably have to download the Dropbox application to your computer.
Yes.
Before it will do that.
Yeah, I think you have to. Yes.
Yeah.
You may.
I'm gonna have to go at 3, but I was just wondering if I can be any more helpful for anything else.
I must say, I'm at this moment feeling I've been sort of thrown up in the air. I haven't quite landed yet. I'm not quite sure exactly where where the path is leading to right now. You've been very helpful already, Jasmine. Thanks, and I was certainly expect to be contacted.
But I think what Dennis said, that maybe we should just go quickly, if we can, through this document and just highlight and almost make a challenge table for this that we think are important. Maybe we can do that in 10 minutes.
Okay, so let's go through this document, and we're basically thinking of application areas where these rather more methodological topics would be relevant.
We are thinking of points within these tables that may be relevantly discussed in this estimation chapter, if the way I understand it.
I don't know if I can see this table. Well, if I see it, I'll probably share it with you, won't I? I don't quite know how. I'll switch to a different screen.
Can you share the? Did you want? Yeah.
I was trying to see this table, but then it takes me away from where I want to be. If you see what I mean. Let me try anyway. Okay, so just don't go away. There is. So I've got my, I don't know what you see on your screens now. I see, yeah.
I see nothing.
We see you, so we should see that instead of you, Philip.
I don't understand.
If you go to share.
Yeah, well, I'm already sharing, but.
With someone else?
No.
No, I mean, I'm sharing my screen, but but when I move to a different.
But then you have to go to the, I think when you click share screen, you should get a picture of all the various screens you might have available to you, and you have to.
Let's try again. Let's try again. So, all right, let's do share screen. So you want to see, this is talking about challenges. This is a big challenge.
So for example, if I try to share something, it says only the host can share. Are you a host in this conversation?
I'm a host, yes, I'm a host.
Okay. So if you go to share content, basically, then you should be able to share.
Yes, I'm trying. What happens if I share that?
Yes, it's working.
Yeah, but it's not what you want to see. What did you say?
Oh, but no, if you just then go to the folder, just get the document.
That's what I thought I'd done. I've got the document. Can you see it now?
No, we can see a screen which has many folders in it.
I don't know why you're seeing something quite different from what I'm seeing.
Do you have two screens?
I've got many screens. Alas.
Okay, so maybe you need to select which screen. So when it comes, you have to click, and often you just like literally see them and you press the one.
Yes, it's a question of seeing it. I don't.
Does anyone else have any more useful ideas than mine?
I think you're describing it
well.
What
I'm going to do, I'm going to stop my share maybe and start to share again, and I think that might be the way to do it.
Yeah, maybe one option is to just go to the screen you are looking at, the mouse there, and then start share content.
Microsoft, I want Microsoft Excel. Bear with me, please. I think. Doesn't it mean?
While we're waiting, could I say if other people are finding difficulty,
it's a word file. It's not
word file. Sorry, it's a word file. It's a table. Is it? Yes, it's a word file. Just
Excel, but it's okay. In that case, that might work. Did that work?
Yeah.
Did? Oh, this is exhausting.
Right.
I'll make it larger. I can't. I got to make it larger so I can read it.
You go down to your bottom right-hand corner, Phil, where it says 147%, and click on plus a couple of times. So just click on the plus, I would, because that'll take the next to the 147 down the bottom there. Just click on the plus.
You know, I have contacted Kira to see if she can drop in and help you guys. Unfortunately, my knowledge on Zoom isn't fantastic to be able to help you with it. But I have
Well,
contacted
we're getting there slowly.
now. Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, I got it now. So the rows are the different approaches we can take, or the different ingredients and aspects of approaches, and the columns are the application areas.
Yeah.
So we're gonna try and blend the previous list into cells of this.
No, I think at least in the first instance, I would do it as a new separate table, because I don't.
Table.
Okay.
I mean, so
I thought you would just be showing this to people as a sort of just to illustrate what I was talking about. And
all right.
Then go back to your specific SEJ document.
Right. Well, we could put some of those topics down as new row labels. Is that the idea? But no, we need people who are experts in the application areas, or at least have some familiarity with them, in order to be able to know what's what, really, and what's possible and what challenges are.
Well, so we could talk about, so what one option is so if you look at the boxes that are crossing of emergence and modeling and emergence and estimation, those are the sort of two that I would, and then possibly interventions and endemicity and elimination. But those two, if we focus for the moment, do we see things here that are currently here, but if you flip them around, we can rephrase them and they would be useful, where a column is estimation.
The column is estimation.
Yeah, so if you imagine this kind of sits turned around, because that's how I'm thinking, well, that's how I understand we're going to write the next.
Well, I mean, it doesn't really matter what are the rows and what are the columns. It really matters what goes inside the cells.
And
okay.
Yeah.
Are we?
I think in a way, you see, Phil, I sort of feel you're cheating here. I feel what I want is what I really would like to see happen is the blind experiment, where you're given a blank version of this table, and you fill it in from the methodology's eye view, and then when we've done that, we look and see whether your view agrees or whatever, how it relates to the view from the applied people's point of view.
Okay, I mean,
I think that's actually very.
I'm unhappy at starting off looking at their point of view already, because I think that's going to colour what you come up with.
But
let's do that then.
Sorry, Jasmine, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, let's delete these and make a challenges second part table now, and then just populate estimation with what we think might be the case in the next 5 minutes. So.
Sorry.
Well, I think
I think that's a bit of a that is too much of a challenge.
Well, that's why I think the easiest thing to do is to go back to your SEJ document and, as I say, go down its bullet points. And so
can you see it now?
Go down its bullet points.
Can you see it?
No.
No. Oh,
you can still see the table.
I don't understand this. I just went back to it.
Maybe you need to just stop sharing and then.
So I can't just switch between documents and.
I would have thought you could.
Well, you can if you have one screen. I think if you have more than one screen, it gets confused. I have that. It has happened to me.
Okay, so anyway, so got the. So they got to be on the same screen. Okay, let's find it again. So that's that. And so that's the table. And this one I know is because.
Yeah, there you are.
Can you see it now?
Success.
Can you see a bit of both documents? I don't know what you can see.
We can just see the document with the bulletin points, the one that you wrote.
Oh, you can. And if I do that, what do you see?
Same.
You can see the table.
No.
No? Okay,
just
I gotta
see that
give up.
one
I
document
gotta
that
give
you
up.
had.
Gotta give up. Sorry. Give up.
My apologies, but I'm going to have to leave now. Thank you
Sorry.
so much. It was an
Thank
interesting
you so
discussion.
much for joining us, and
See you next
Kat,
time.
for the next few
Kat, do you wanna
weeks, or
carry
however
on?
long it's going to take.
Yeah, if you want to carry on dialogue by email as to getting access to this Dropbox, please do.
Yeah, I'll
there must
see.
be a solution there somewhere.
Yeah, Jasmina said she would share the document with me once it's tidied up a bit, so that will also work. And I'll see if I've had a little glance now. I'll see if I can even contribute. There's no point worrying about it if I'm not going to be able to contribute. Thank you so much, Dennis. Thanks,
Okay.
Philip.
Thank
Bye
you very
all.
much, Katrina. Bye.
Bye. I'm also gonna have to go soon, but maybe so can I be helpful in very quickly in the next few minutes or not really?
Oh, please.
Let me just say that I feel, although I'm sort of hosting this, I feel rather incompetent at a lot of it, both in terms of the details of the SEJ and the applications and everything. So I'm hoping for a great deal of input from the people who know a bit more than I do. A lot more than I do.
Well, guys, I have to go as well. My final thought, I guess, I mean, I don't know how, obviously we have different ways of thinking about this, is that like the application areas I always see, when I try and describe to people how methodology relates to application, I say, well, you can imagine the applications are like chairs you want to build, and the methodology is the tools that you have for doing it. So you could, I mean, if you have a bunch of tools, that doesn't give you a chair, but it does give you things that you can use to make the chair. And you have to understand what the chair's requirements are in order to get the tools. And the chair owner has to understand what tools there are to design sort of chairs that are actually possible to make. And so that to me is the cross. Yeah.
This was actually one of the bullet points, wasn't it, of getting, I've lost that document now, but.
But
anyway,
and
I think that's an important point, Michael, but we are making something very similar as a point in the modeling paper. And that's the thing, to have an overarching overview of those.
Yeah.
But for instance, I mean, just to take your very first bullet point, Phil, the early identification of new pandemics. I mean, one could, of course, be talking about some very early stage of just the virus in the environment. But suppose we're talking about a new disease which has managed to spread to a small number of people in some village in China or wherever, and we have a little bit of data on it, and we're trying to identify whether it's, what its R value is, let's call it, whether it's going to, and so on. So there'll be a conventional estimation where you say we're going to assume it is a standard, simple, probably branching process at this stage type epidemic model, and we need to estimate the infectious period. We need to estimate R0, the number of contacts, and so I'm sure there's existing estimation doing that. And now I think if you talk about that challenge, then I'm sure you can, and there are problems in that. For instance, a problem that's known about that is that because of the way you're looking at the data, you will underestimate the generation time of the disease. Because what you will see a lot of is the examples where, suppose that normally the disease passes from one generation to the next in a week, but if it can be as quick as, say, 3 days from someone catching it to passing it on, then obviously in the early branching process, you'll see more of those. So you'll get an underestimate of the generation gap of the disease. So that's what I would call a conventional problem in estimation to do with beginnings of pandemic. But then a completely different, and I think almost certainly fruitful challenge is to bring, well, certainly uncertainty quantification to bear here and say, hang on a minute, you're talking about applying a conventional model from your experience of other diseases to a new disease. It might not be appropriate. Maybe we need to look at a range of possible models and do some, see what I mean? So,
oh no, that definitely is.
It's the same applied challenge, but you bring in
Yeah, but I
methodology to
I
deal with.
thought you meant something a bit more fundamental, though. I mean, in this case, the way you've described it, the scientists have actually pointed to something already, and they've given you some data, partial though it is. But of course, how do you get into the state where people actually flag this as a possible pandemic that requires this analysis in the first place? I mean, that to me is like the fundamental challenge. And I mean, there's a lot of talk about whether, for example, COVID has just been around for quite a long time. It's just that people didn't actually know it was a thing until, you know, at some point, you know, it hit a level of public consciousness, and certain scientists did certain things. So the question about being more sensitized to getting into the situation where the analysis starts, I mean, is a huge challenge, but that's really interesting.
And but does that not involve sort of surveillance and data monitoring?
And a wider view about sort of the science, you know, and the things to be aware of, and a general level of awareness. Yeah, it involves all of these things, and it is the fundamental challenge, is to catch these things early.
Yeah,
and then,
absolutely. But I think what we would like to do there is to capture which methodologies are likely to be helpful for that. And for example, the data theme, which is, you know, number 8 in our list, if you like, is obviously relevant to that, because one of the things people are getting increasingly sophisticated about is monitoring data. And the data could be, for instance, the data could be a database of viruses in the wild and see if those are changing, okay? Or it could be a database of people with respiratory diseases, particularly people with respiratory diseases living in the kind of known risk areas for new diseases, and looking at their symptoms and looking at their symptoms across a database and saying, although none of these, if you take any one of these individual people who fell ill, then the doctor is going to look at it and say it's probably flu, but it's a bit unusual, whatever. Whereas someone actually looking at a whole database may say, we've had a completely unusual proportion of cases of, quotes, flu are showing this symptom of flu, but not that symptom. This well be a new virus, we must look further. So, I mean, I would call that a data analytic problem.
Yeah, but you need to have the awareness of it. It's data analytics for a given purpose, though. This is the point. I mean, obviously, you can look at data and find anything about anything, but what you need to be sensitized to, and what counts as things that are actually worth flagging and worth investigating, and etc. It then crosses over from the data to understanding the science.
Absolutely,
so I thought that's a fabulous challenge. I mean, that's a paper all by itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I thought they all are.
Do we want to wrap this up fairly soon?
I need to go. Yeah.
Yeah, but I found this interesting, informative, and confusing. Not quite sure really what the path is now. I mean, we can look at, we can make up a matrix. I'm not quite sure who should be filling in the cells, or even who should be labeling the rows and columns, for that matter.
But I think, as I said, I think you're jumping one step forward, Phil. I feel the first step is to look down these bullet points and say what kind of methodological challenges. And I think we've already come out with the first bullet point alone. Early identification of new pandemics involves potentially challenges of data analysis, of big data, getting relevant big data and surveilling it, if that's the right word, and also, and then there's maybe at the next stage where diseases start, there's this question of whether a conventional analysis of the early stage of a branching process is really what you want to be doing, or whether you need to bring in tools of uncertainty or expert judgment.
Right. So, I mean, you and Michael have had a good conversation about this, and a number of these topics have been mentioned. Should they be maybe added under, I mean, some of them sound like they're not particularly directly going to involve expert solicitation. Some, I mean, some will.
I think the reason I think it does is it partly involves things that you haven't necessarily seen data on yet. So the expert elicitation is all that you have.
But I mean, the expert, tell you what, I mean, the expert elicitation, I mean, I think would have been very valuable at this maybe just slightly later stage of the current pandemic, because there was a phase which roughly lasted from January through in sometime in February, when countries all around the world knew there was this new virus, but had decided that they didn't need to take any action yet. Okay.
Except banning people from Wuhan.
And that was presumably because they were coming to, they were making, I mean, with hindsight, you can, a simple way of putting it is to say they were making a narrow judgment. They thought it could only change in this kind of way, and if it was a problem, they could deal with it later on. And it could well have been that if they'd got a better range of experts to judge it, you would have had people saying, no, there's far more uncertainty here. There is considerable probability, even if they thought it's say 10% or 20%, there's considerable probability this could turn to a worldwide pandemic. And if you look at that option, you need to take a decision now. You can't put it off till March, which is what people did. Now, of course, some countries exercise good judgment. I mean, Taiwan and South Korea acted very quickly, but there was definitely a phase in which, you know, we knew a lot about the virus, but people were making the wrong judgment as to whether they needed to take action. So
that, I mean, they presumably, I mean, the point is that there was much more uncertainty than was admitted.
Yeah. But the countries who had already had pandemics ripping them apart were a lot more sensitized to actually paying attention to this and taking it seriously.
Well, I was watching a program this morning, which the New York Times, I think, led me to, which was about, it was contrasting the terrible balls up that the United States has done in dealing with coronavirus itself, with the fact that the way the rest of the world was better prepared is actually largely thanks to American training. That from about 2005, which I think was the bird flu scare onwards, the United States was a real driver in getting countries around the world to think about future pandemics and do things like work out their contact tracing and so on. And an example of this was that South Korea actually did, they not only did I know in the UK we did a pandemic exercise, the government did 3 or 4 years ago, which they notably failed to act on. In South Korea, they did a pandemic exercise in November 2019, and wanting to simulate something, quotes, realistic, they decided for their topic, what about a new coronavirus? So they were completely gobsmacked when about a month later, they found that this was precisely the real life situation they would be faced with. And they'd already a month earlier come up with the conclusion that if they had that kind of thing, their testing facilities were grossly inadequate. So they had actually started to move on getting much better testing. But the background point there was that the whole development of a system to face up to new pandemics was very largely thanks to efforts of American scientists and the CDC. So it's all
ironic, but not in a good way.
Yeah. But certainly come back to my point that expert elicitation could have been very, very useful in January or February in
especially
a new possible pandemic.
Especially if we had the right experts on board, namely those who had some.
So I think if you break down a pandemic to these stages, you know, the virus in the wild, the virus getting into a few people, will you notice it? The virus starting to cause cases, so you do notice it, but you need to take an expert judgment as to whether this is a worldwide danger or not. you know, I think if we identify challenges in that sort of way, I think you'll find that that the both UQ and SEJ almost certainly have a very good contribution to make.
Right. Now, so you've split it up into these different
Anyway,
sort of
guys,
areas.
I have to go. Thanks, guys. It's great.
Yeah.
So obviously I
Okay,
have
thanks very much, Michael. I'm just thinking, I mean, we haven't really shared any tasks out.
no,
And
I'm not happening.
not many people left to share with.
I know. I'm going.
Michael's disappearing before you get. Yeah, he's gone.
Well, I think what would be nice is if the people you've named for these various things had to think about what they're talking about under that heading.
Okay, so in that case, I think, Dennis, can I add you under early since you said a lot about early identification of new pandemic?
I talked myself into that one. Okay.
Yes, you did. Have I spelt you right?
Yes, yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Okay, I'll even bold you. Yes. Okay. So, yeah, but I mean, a lot of people I haven't heard from, of course, and but maybe we don't want too many. I was certainly hoping that Willie Aspinall would be heavily involved, seeing he's got a lot of experience in these things. But we want to think, I mean, some of the people here are knowledgeable about the epidemic side of things. Some of us aren't, I include myself, which makes this thing a little bit more speculative for those of us who really are flying blind. You see what I mean? Because I mean, when talking about this early identification of new pandemics, you've brought your knowledge of these things to bear right away, which is great. But for other application topics, we really need people with the knowledge to maybe split them up into different subtopics. I'm not quite sure, to be honest, of the best way of proceeding now, and who to involve and how. Any suggestions? Have I lost? Are you there? Have I lost my connection?
No, I'm here.
No, because I do keep losing my connection. Sorry.
So I would put myself in the same category as you, Philip, that I don't really know as much about the epidemic side of things. So I'd be happy to contribute to things, but
but we are trying to focus really. Yeah, thanks, Ben. I mean, yes, we do need, I think, people who are rather more knowledgeable about the epidemic side. I mean, there's the number of methodologists here, or people who've been applying the thing, but in different application areas. But we need a combination of expertise to do it properly.
Well, maybe we need to start some two-dimensional conversations, really. You know, if
so in the cross classification.
Yeah. So you need people who have you have people who in Michael's description, the people who have the toolbox, discussing with people who have various kinds of chair they'd like to make.
Yes.
So I think that would be. So I think. So I think the way to proceed might be for us to flesh this out as best we can from the methodologist's point of view, but it will be a little bit in the way of sort of questions. So I think I suggested 3 possible contributions to under the early identification sort of bullet point, and to have a conversation with people who come from the appropriate application side on that.
Right. So we've got two documents in play at the moment. The specific one on challenges for SEJ, and your more generic one, the table. And
a document for UQ, do we?
There is a document for UQ. I haven't looked at that for a while. I'm not going to switch around my screen because
no, not
goodness knows what will happen. Yes, there is a document for UQ in chapter 7. But I don't know. I feel as I remain confused about the exact path to take at this point, and what the starting point should be. Even I can see the kind of thing we'd like to end up with, these interactions between methodology, between the tools and the chairs, and sort of put them together and see how they fit. And lots of cells of different kinds there, but how to get to that efficiently, I'm not sure. I mean, should we go? So a lot of these things, for example, in my list under A, pandemic applications, they are very generic. The most specific one, early identification of new pandemics, you've already broken down into sort of 3 or 4 different points, which is great. The others are much more generic, and
I think the reconciliation of
targeted at specific issues in pandemics, but that really requires some input from people who know about pandemics.
What do you think? What does the? Let me just see if. What do you mean by causal modelling? The third bullet point.
I think Victoria came up with that, and I'm not sure how much it differs. Well, I mean, I think my understanding of it is something which allows you to model the effects of interventions, something which is sufficiently, I don't know if that's what she meant, but which is sufficiently specific that it sort of says how outputs relate to inputs, if you like, and how things relate to, because I mean, they're very important is to understand a system not in an unchanging context, but what will happen if you start intervening on it. Whether that, but that really is also goes to the point just above, forecasting under different assumed scenarios and interventions.
Well, so I mean, both of those, maybe those two taken together could be.
Together,
you know, it's methodology to evaluate interventions, isn't it?
Exactly. So
I mean, I think that would be. It seems to me that would be a perfectly good pandemic challenge. Okay, because it's got a clear applied aim. But
it is that okay. Okay, I think I changed that as it. Okay, so we'll combine those two. Methodology. It lost it.
Evaluate interventions.
To evaluate interventions. And
a bullet point and a white.
I don't know how to get that back.
I think if we just do a return after my name, possibly. See what I mean? If you just, do a return after the pandemics in the line above.
Reckon?
That's
too complicated.
No,
never mind.
Get rid of that. No, go to do a return after methodology to evaluate interventions. Just to no, it doesn't give you a bullet point, does it? I never understand Word very well, Phil.
No, Word is dreadful.
Play around with it. You can. We'll assume there's a bullet point there for the moment. Might even be able to copy a bullet point and stick it in.
No, I'm sure that won't work. It doesn't really matter.
Reconciliation of diverse views and models seems to me, I mean, that maybe comes under the modeling paper rather than inference. I don't know. I mean, Kat's view on that would be interesting.
I mean, I don't. A lot of what you call expert elicitation. I mean, I think it's stretching it rather to call it inference anyway, because a lot of it, inference, to me means inference from data, and often there isn't any data. But these words are rather flexible. But this is specific. This is particularly what Kat Shea has been working and will have been working. Well, all of these people have worked on. Well, Marissa more on the experts and Kat more on the models. But
well, I mean, I think that. I mean, I think that set of 5 bullet points, if we imagine the bullet point that refuses to appear,
that's something to work on. Maybe we'll ignore the others.
I think that would be a good. I think that would be a good. I think that would be a good initial set of challenges, because if we've got the UQ people as well, and possibly conventional estimators or whatever, you know, we're rapidly going to build up a line of things. I mean, I think what we want to do.
I mean, these are under the heading pandemic applications. So
exactly. And I think the thing to do would be, the thing to do under each would be to do what I'll try and do under the first one, which is to just sketch out the kind of phenomenon in the pandemic that one is trying to do better. And then that should provide a springboard for introducing potential contribution of existing and novel methodology.
Yeah, I think that's good. So that's something fairly concrete we can move ahead on.
If I was going to start,
I mean, so at the moment we have. I don't know. I mean, we have people assigned to all of these things. Some haven't agreed. And whether we need to, well, some people will have some familiarity with the problems arising in pandemics, and others will need assistance with that. Because a lot of these people are fairly methodological rather than applied to pandemics. So we'll need more of the expertise coming from the applied field to specify what are the issues, as you've done to some extent already in the very first one. And you're going to expand on that. So we really want to draw extra people in. I mean, well, I think Jasmina's probably pretty well qualified to help with it.
And I'm happy to. We're having a meeting tomorrow evening of all the. I think you're on the invitation list for it, actually. Which I
haven't had an invitation.
No, the invitation is.
I doubt that I can join. What's the meeting?
It's 9 p.m. tomorrow night, and the reason for it being then is that we have people both in the United States and New Zealand interested.
Yeah. So I know.
That kind of timing is the way to capture them all. So
9 p.m. tomorrow. Well, I mean, so if I've got an invitation, I haven't seen it yet.
So, no, it's about to be sent round. I was waiting to get the Zoom out of Kira, because I want to send people a single email that gives them the information and the Zoom link all together, because it's just 2 separate messages and someone loses one or both of them. So yeah. But I was going to say that one could, I could certainly put that on the agenda for that meeting.
What was the intention of the meeting?
The intention of the meeting is to sort out the demarcation between the 5 application themes, and to which is what that table was supposed to help with. I could begin, I think if I, with these.
I might be able to join. I'll try to. 9 o'clock tomorrow night.
So
I'm still awake.
So depending on how that goes, but at the very least, and as it were,
Can I just know you're still recording? Do you want me to stop the recording, or
you could stop recording, yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't think it matters.
I think we've nearly finished, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
Right, no problem.